Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us online today for Edible Economics, A Hungry Economist Explains the World. My name is Siobhan Choi, President and CEO of the Alaska World Affairs Council. Our council was founded in 1958 by the late Evangeline Atwood, who believed that educating our community about world affairs is essential for strong, informed citizenship. Today, our mission continues to bring the world to Alaska and spark curiosity, understanding, and engagement in global issues. We're thrilled to have so many joining us virtually from across the country, and we're grateful to our speaker, Ha-Joon Chang, who is joining us late in the evening from the UK. I also want to give a very special welcome to the 150 students tuning in from Romig Middle School right here in Anchorage, Alaska. Before we begin, I'd like to extend our gratitude to the World Affairs Council of Houston, Oregon, Seattle, Connecticut, Charlotte, Dallas, Fort Worth, Kansas City, and Juneau for partnering with us on this event. Your collaboration makes this program possible, and we are very grateful to have your support today. During the program, we want to make sure that you have a chance to engage with our speaker. So if you have a question, please submit it in our Q&A box. We will also be bringing some participants live on camera to ask their questions. So if you'd like to do that, just send us a message and we will turn your camera on at the appropriate time. And it is now my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker, Ha-Joon Chang. Professor Chang is a distinguished research professor of economics and the co-director of the Center for Sustainable Structural Transformation and the Development Leadership Dialogue at the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. Professor Chang is the author of 17 books, including his most recent work, Edible Economics. His writings have been translated into 46 languages and published in 48 countries, with worldwide book sales totaling around 3 million copies. We are also honored to have Lisa Christensen moderating today's discussion. Lisa is the Honorary Consul of Norway in Alaska and has served in an advisory role at the Alaska World Affairs Council throughout our recent leadership transition. So now please join me in giving a warm welcome to Lisa Christensen and Ha-Joon Chang.
Thank you, Siobhan. This is so fun. I'm so happy. And Dr. Chang, thank you so much for joining us all the way from the UK to share information about your great book, Edible Economics. And I also want to give a shout out to Tim DeRoche from World Oregon for recommending this book and recommending that we have you here in Alaska. This is going to be so much fun. I can't wait. So let's dive right into lunch and your book because it is lunchtime for us here. So you might see me eating now and then. So the tone of your book, um, it's funny and it's warm and it's unpretentious. You clearly seem to want non-economists to feel like they're included. So in this
Absolutely.
spirit, and since it is lunchtime, like I said, I may have brought some yummy food references from your books to enjoy as you speak. So this is going to be fun. Let's go right into your book. In your book, you mix humor and food to explain serious topics. So what made you realize that talking about pizza and noodles could make economics more meaningful?
Yes, no, thank you for the invitation. Alaska is a special place for me because that is the first foreign soil that I ever stepped on back in 1986 when I was flying to the UK as a graduate student. In those days, there was the Cold War, and South Korean planes couldn't fly over China nor the Soviet Union. So we first had to fly to Alaska to fly down to Europe. So yeah, that is a special place for me. And my first meal that I had outside Korea was in Alaska airport, a bowl of Japanese udon noodles. It's almost almost 40 years since I was there, but I'm really pleased to be here. Yeah, no, what you know, many people have asked me food and economics, what the hell? And my short answer is why not? Yeah, I like food, I like economics. Why not talk about both things at the same time? But the more serious answer is, over the years, I have come to realize that, capitalist economy where everything, whether it's, I don't know, funding of museums or teaching of ancient languages in universities, where everything is supposed to justify its existence in terms of its monetary value, democracy becomes meaningless unless people know at least some economics. Because when we vote for our politicians, we are voting for, yeah, I mean, not just the obviously economic issues like jobs and taxes and so on, but also every bit of our society. The who gets elected matters for preservation of our cultural heritage. That matters for how solidaristic the society is and so on. So yeah, I've taken it upon myself to write economics books that can be read by uh, the general public. But over time, I've written a few of those books, but over time I realized that, I'm pretty confident that people will read my book once they pick it up because it's always been written in an accessible style. But this psychological barrier that against people actually picking up an economics book. So basically, it's a scam. I trick people into believing that this is somehow about food, and then yeah, indeed, 40% of the book is about food, but somehow I turn it into an economic story that's so that people will, I mean, people who normally not even pick up an economics book will end up reading it, and I think it has kind of worked because on Amazon website and so on, I occasionally see these reviews saying, "Oh, I picked this book up thinking that it's about food. It isn't, but I'm glad that I read it because I got to learn a thing or two about economics." So, yeah, that's how I got to write this book.
You're absolutely right about that. And thanks for mentioning your website. You have this a really great website. I encourage anyone to go to that. And let's go right to that noodles because I am
Mm-mm.
smelling these noodles and it's making me hungry. And if you're curious, these are Vietnamese noodles. So,
Okay,
um,
thank you for this one.
so you talk about noodles in one of your chapters called Noodles. So tell us what happens when we insist that everyone eat the same kind of noodles.
Yes, no, actually, as I say in the book, Koreans are the biggest noodle eaters, at least the instant variety. So we have by far the highest per capita consumption of instant noodle, and we make noodle out of every possible starch. It's not just the wheat or rice, but there's barley, there's corn starch, and sweet potato starch, and everything is made into noodles. So we have a lot of variety there. Interestingly, in Italy, they make noodle basically out of one thing, the wheat. Yeah, I mean, some poor Italians used to mix things like chestnut powder into noodle, but it's just one kind of ingredient. But to make up for it, they make different shapes. There are something like 256 officially recognized shapes of pasta. So not just familiar spaghettis and pennes, but there's one that look like human ear, orecchiette, the one that looks like a radiator. So basically, the seeking varieties of the human nature. But unfortunately, in the last few decades, with the rise of so-called neoliberalism or this free market ideology, we have been fed only one kind of economic ideas, and it has made the world a lot less kind of resilient because okay, I mean all theories have limitations because they have different ways of conceptualizing the economy. So the so-called classical economists of the 19th centuries thought the economy was made up of different classes, capitalists, workers, landlords. Now we see it as a collection of individuals, so classes not considered. They have different theories of how the economies develop and so on. And yeah, they all have different strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. Unfortunately, when you use only one kind of idea, one kind of ingredient, or have only one kind of shape, then when the situation it might work in the short run, but when situation changes, you are stumped for solution, and then you keep applying the same solution to different problems, and then it doesn't work. And then you start blaming the world. You know, the world is not working according to our theory, so it's the world that is wrong, not our theory. So yeah, I mean, in the last the few decades, you know, I mean, this free market policy, yeah, it did some good things in some areas, but you know, it was applied indiscriminately in every situation, in every country, and in the situations that actually would be damaged by free market economics rather than be helped by it. So, yeah, I've been, you know, campaigning for within the economics community what is known as economic pluralism, the idea that we need different theories working together to help us understand this complex and ever-changing world better because most economists, I mean, whether they are left wing or right wing, I mean, they tend to have only one theory, huh? And they are very good at analyzing some things. They are uh, they give good solutions to certain problems, but they cannot do come up with good solutions for everything. And I've been campaigning that we need to learn different economic theories and mix them, but in different ways according to the situation. And that's how economics should be done. I mean, it's not a very popular view yet, but yeah, proud to say that it's been gaining ground slowly. So let's see.
Let's let's talk about that. Let's talk about the free trade gospel and bring it back here a little bit to the United States and
Hmm.
our new tariff policy.
Yeah.
So, in your, it was really interesting to read in your beef chapter, you make the striking point where you say that Britain's rise was built not on free trade but on
Exactly. Yeah.
protectionism. And while that free gospel was spreading in the 19th, 20th centuries, I didn't know, but you said the US quietly maintained tariffs of
Oh,
35 to
absolutely. Yeah.
50% for nearly
Yeah.
100 years.
Yeah.
Right up until the Second World War, we had tariffs of 35 to 50%.
That's
So
right. Yeah.
here's my question. What do you think about the current administration's return to tariffs, especially under Trump's America First economic strategy? Because I'm having a little bit of a hard time wrapping my mind around, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? Are we seeing something that's this smart reassertion of industrial policy, or is it
Uh-huh.
just political convenience or protectionism?
Yeah, to fast forward to the conclusion, I don't think this particular way of using tariffs by Mr. Trump is going to work. But let's begin at the beginning. You know that this idea called infant industry protection, the idea that the governments of economically backward countries need to nurture and protect their young industries until they grow up and can compete in the global market, exactly in the same way that we want to protect and nurture children until they grow up and can compete in the other labor market is actually an American idea. You know? You've seen the author of this idea m- hundreds of times in your lives, yeah, without realizing who that this is. The guy on the $10 bill, Alexander Hamilton, yeah, the first Treasury Secretary of the United States of America. So when Hamilton became the first Treasury Secretary back in 1789, you know, the U.S. was I mean, compared to European countries, a backward economy, especially compared to England, which was uh, rising fast to become the global hegemon at the time. It was a really backward economy. And Hamilton's argument was simple, you know, that they eventually want to be able to compete with the Brits and other Europeans. But before we get there, we need to protect and nurture industries. You know? And this has worked. I mean, you know, not perfectly, but very, very well to propel the United States to the new position of global hegemon by the time of the Second World War. And yeah, I think that policy worked really well in the US in the 19th century, early 20th century. It was the foundation of development policies in countries like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan in the late 20th century, and also a bit later China's development. Unfortunately, the policy that is applied today in the United States by the Trump administration is not going to work, not because giving protection to certain industries is necessarily a bad idea, but because A is giving protection to industries which really have messed up. Yeah. So industries that you could say that this is a geriatric version of the infant industry protection. It's like kind of trying to revive the career of your 50-year-old son who has squandered his fortunes because he was rather than managing his company, blowing money in Las Vegas and buying his third yacht and so on. Yeah. So are these really industries that you should be supporting? Some of them might be, some of them aren't. Yeah, but more importantly, the problem, in the United States today is that this corporate sector has basically stopped investing. Yeah? The most important source of investment in the corporate sector in the rich countries, at least, is retained profit. Yeah? And until the 80s, American corporations would, when they make profit, distribute about half of it in the dividends and keep the other half and invested it to buy new machines, to do research and development. Unfortunately, this has changed since the mid 1980s and in the last 4 decades. I mean, initially not that high, but at least in the last 25 years, 90 to 95% of American corporate profit has been distributed away from the corporations in the form of dividends, which still account for half of the profit, and this famous stock buybacks, which is the practice where companies buy their own shares so that share prices go up and shareholders, if they want, can cash in. Yeah. And in this way, the American companies have no profit left to invest. Yeah? So in that kind of system, if you give extra profit to these companies by giving them protection, guaranteeing them markets in that way, they are going to blow it up again. Yeah. So I'll take this seriously if Mr. Trump says that all the industries that get protection from U.S. Federal government, they are not allowed to do stock buybacks. Yeah? They need to reinvest this profit to raise productivity, to become more competitive, yeah, against the foreign competition. Unfortunately, that's not happening. So it will only end up raising prices for American consumers, and these industries will become kind of basically dependent on this life support. You know? So I'm really sad to see that a country that really invented this brilliant theory is now kind of applying it in this kind of wrong way, and probably it won't bring much benefit to the country. Yeah?
Okay, so this is not very uplifting. And here, as we're watching stock markets soar, we're watching the Nasdaq go up, the S&P, the Dow, everything's going up. Is this based then, in your opinion, off of economic fundamentals, or is this based on something else? Should we be worried about that
Yeah,
too?
no, as for the stock market, I mean, it's basically driven by this the tech companies, tech stocks, AI companies especially. And now even the Goldman Sachs, the International Monetary Fund, they are all saying that the U.S. Stock market has a huge bubble. Yeah. So unfortunately, the U.S. Stock market has been rather detached from the famous expression Wall Street versus Main Street. Yeah. So now the Wall Street is so separated from the Main Street that it doesn't really care what's going on there. And unfortunately, if you keep blowing bubbles there, it will burst. And no, it's really frightening because this bubble is so large that when it bursts, it might be worse than what we experienced back in 2008. Yeah, I mean at the time, but the U.S. government basically had to spend $1 trillion to bail out these the banks and other financial institutions. Do we want a repeat of that? I'm really worried. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Well, let's talk about spending.
Yeah.
So you have an interesting chapter about what's called Coca-Cola.
Yep.
And it's about capitalism. So could you, if you had to explain capitalism to a high schooler, we have a bunch of middle schoolers here with us, using only a bottle of Coke,
Ah,
how would you do it?
gosh, no, that's very difficult. Yeah. So yeah, the Coke, it has gone through the actually quite a transformation because when it was first made, it was called Coca-Cola because it contained cocaine and cola nut, which is also a bit of the kind of it gives you a bit of high, yeah. So it was a very kind of addictive drink, and then yeah, over time, co cocaine was taken out, and then later the cola nut was also taken out, and it has basically made people addicted to this taste through the use of sugar and other flavorings. I mean, nothing fundamentally wrong with that, making people making the things people like, but you don't uh, when you're trying to make a profit, you don't necessarily think of the health consequences and kind of bigger social problems that might be generated by it. So, yeah, I mean, capitalism is basically a system where, if there's the demand backed up by money, yeah, I mean, it has to be backed up by money. I mean, it's not simple demand for, I don't know, affordable housing or whatever. If there's no money behind it, it won't happen. But if the demand is backed up by money, it will be provided. Yeah? However absurd the demand may be. Yeah? I mean, that some of these the children's toy crazes the good examples, Furby dolls, the Cabbage Patch Kids which was there in my the teenage years, These things, in the end, I mean, why do we spend so much resource making these things, yeah, when in the end this will be forgotten and thrown away 1, 2 years later. So, but insofar as providing it, capitalism is a very, very efficient system. Yeah. But what is important is we need to make sure that it puts resources into good things. Yeah. Because if you just leave it to the market, it will just provide, put in resources into making demands backed by money. This is how during the COVID pandemic, you had literally tens of millions of people suffering and hundreds of thousands of people dying because of this disease, because you didn't have enough vaccines, you didn't have protective equipment for medical stuff, while the tech billionaires were having a space race. Yeah, so we don't, you know. this happened only because capitalism f fulfills any demand without asking question as far as it's backed by money. Yeah? So that its efficiency is a virtue, but we need to control the system so that this efficiency serves the greater good. I'm not saying that we need some kind of the centrally planned economy or society run by the Plato's philosopher king, but we need to exactly because it's so efficient in providing these things that we need to put the appropriate safeguards.
Let's follow up on that. And Dr. Chang, one of the things I really love about your book, Edible Economics, is that you shift from these really profound ideas like invisible labor, inequality, to something really unexpected. Well, like this Elvis sandwich. Now, this one was new to me. And for anyone who hasn't read Ha-Joon's book, Edible Economics, or if you haven't seen the opening scene from Lilo and Stitch, where Lilo makes
Ah,
a sandwich for the fish, you talk about the sandwich made famous by Elvis Presley. This is peanut butter, bananas, and bacon.
yeah,
So
bacon's not obligatory, but yeah.
I had to do it. I just had to try it. I
Uh,
haven't tried it yet. So it's salty, it's sweet, and maybe it's a little bit of a cry for help. I don't know. But so tell us, why the Elvis sandwich? What made you choose it? And what serious economic story were you trying to tell through something like this? And
yeah,
let's
yeah.
let's be honest, it is kind of irresistible. So tell us, what were you trying to teach us through the sandwich?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the chapter was called banana. So for me, the key ingredient in the Elvis sandwich was banana. Although the is one of the tastiest, but very undervalued the sandwich. It's got everything. It's got crunchy, it's got crispy, it's got the sweetness. It's substantial. Yeah. So the story of banana is actually very deeply intertwined with the story of the global capitalism, which has it's a very dark side. So you know, banana originally comes from Southeast Asia. So somewhere between Malaysia, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea. It originated from there, but it kind of through sea trade, it went to Africa, and then it was grown in Africa in large quantity because it's very very productive the crop. So it can produce the 10 times the kind of uh, carbohydrate that the potato produce in the same piece of land. Yeah? So it became very popular. And then when the Europeans, starting with the Portuguese, started moving down to Africa and engaged in the uh, slave trade, it became the staple food of the trade because it was the cheapest source of carbohydrate. They could just load it on the slave ships and then feed the captured the Africans this stuff and you know salted fish and some other really basic things. Yeah, so it became like the symbol of the slavery, and then in the Americas, both North and South, the slave owners would typically give small pieces of land to slaves to grow their own food while giving them very basic rations. And then most of these slaves that grew the bananas because it's the most productive crop. And then later, when these refrigerated ships came along, which made it possible to ship the bananas from Central and South America to the United States before it went bad. I mean, the banana became huge global business. So United Fruits, and all these banana companies that went to Central America, northern South America, like Ecuador, Colombia, and basically grew bananas on a massive scale. And they was so dominant that they had their own customs, yeah. They had their own ports, their own postal service, and then really put pressure on the local governments not to tax them. And then occasionally, when things go difficult for them, but they call in the U.S. Marines to come and punish these countries. So this was the origin of the expression "banana republic." Yeah. So basically, the developing countries, which is dominated by a small number of foreign multinational companies. Yeah, actually, the guy who first invented the term is the American writer O. Henry of the last leaf fame. And yeah, so basically this became kind of a byword for poor developing country dependent on the multinational companies. Unfortunately, these days most people know the Banana Republic only as a clothing brand. Yeah. When you think about it, it's a bit kind of problematic, isn't it? Yeah, because it was the kind of the cynical term to describe these the weak developing countries under the thumbs of the global corporations, and now it's become a clothing brand. So yeah, so the banana, exactly because it was so productive, became the central the element in this global the uh, capitalist the system, which involved a lot of the repression and domination and exploitation. So yeah, I mean it's a crop that we all love, but that has a lot to tell us about the dark side of the history of global capitalism.
That it does. Now, I'm trying to watch the time, being mindful to all of you out there. If you want to ask a question in person, just let us know in the Q&A. We'll bring you on, or if you want to write a question, I'll get to those. Before that, since I am going to wrap up before I get to some Q&A from the audience, I think that, well, maybe it's because I'm just craving chocolate. I don't. You mentioned Hershey's, and in your book, I'm
Ah,
a little
yes.
bit more of a Swiss chocolate person myself, a little hint of sea salt in it.
Uh-huh.
And you talk about chocolate and how it teaches us about inequality, global trade. Do you think that consumers can really change the world by just choosing what they eat?
Well, to an extent, because as I said earlier, I mean, capitalism is good at meeting consumer demand. Yeah. So if a lot of people change their mind about how yeah things should be grown and what we should eat and so on, then different things will be supplied. Yeah. But unfortunately, the capitalism also has the ability to manipulate consumer preference. Yeah. So the advertising, okay, at one level conveys you the information about the product, but usually it's kind of layered with, suggestions for different lifestyle, implication that it might make you healthier, look younger, God knows what, yeah. So that we need to take this more carefully. And yeah, I mean, another story well, I didn't write about it in the book itself, but another story is that there's such a discrepancy in the purchasing power that is money to buy things in the rich countries and the poor countries. When something becomes popular in the rich countries, it can have unintended negative consequences in the developing countries. Yeah, so there was avocado craze in the U.S. and Europe several years ago, and then that really made a lot of the Latin American countries to grow avocados, so much so that in the countries like Mexico, organized criminals got involved in the avocado trade. Uh, in some countries when I don't know, the Japanese or the Americans begin to love something, the locals cannot have it because it becomes too expensive. So there's the unfortunate side to uh, satisfaction of consumer preference because of these discrepancies in the purchasing power of the rich and the poor countries. So, I mean, I didn't write about that particular thing in the book, but later realized that that is a very important thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I've got so many more questions, but we are going to bring on some people first from World Oregon, Tim DuRoche, to ask a question or two. And we'll bring him right on. There he is. Great to see you in person, virtually. And on to you. Next question. Minus the mute.
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Yeah.
Oh, good. Dr. Chang, huge fan. In fact, I think I might have persuaded Alaska to do something with you. Um,
Yeah.
so for me, one of the standout chapters in Edible Economics is the one on chili,
Mm-mm.
about the economic value of care, child
Yeah.
rearing, childbearing, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the sick and the elderly, and its invisibility and its undervaluing. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that metaphor and what chilies and the caring economy share.
Yeah. No, that it's that metaphor is based on this real story in which I took a British friend of mine to a Sichuan restaurant. So Sichuan food is very spicy, even by the Chinese standards. So I took him to the restaurant, and in order to help the customers who are worried about spicy food, the I don't know about the US, but in the UK, Thai restaurants, Mexican restaurants have this system of chilies next to dishes. So, no chili, not spicy, one chili, a bit spicy, three chilies, very spicy. And so this the Sichuan restaurant also had this system, but, they had like up to the five chilies, because they really have a lot of spicy dishes and they wanted to distinguish it. So my British friend who couldn't eat that spicy food very well that said, okay, I'm going to take on insurance and order one without chili, and then yeah, Ha-Joon, you can order a few things that don't go up to five, but you order more spicy things. And we ordered, and then the waitress came with his food, and it had like the pinky, the six pinky size chilies, the relatively small dish. And my friend freaked out and said that, what is this? You must have made a mistake. I ordered the dish with no chili, and then the waitress pointed out that no, those chili marks are just scales. No chili doesn't mean that there is actually no chili. It just means that it's the least spicy. So yeah, so the garlic in Korean food, the chili in the Sichuan food, they are so ubiquitous, you stop seeing them. Yeah. So care work is like that. I mean, it's everywhere. Without the care work, that I mean, well, mostly women do at home, the society don't exist. Yeah. I mean, never mind that, labor market policy, never mind the macroeconomic policy. I mean, that's the foundation of our society. Huh? But we don't even recognize this the existence in economics because in the standard economics, at least, you count only marketed things. Yeah. So the old style, the typically not so funny economist joke is that when you marry your housekeeper, you reduce your national income, yeah? Because you used to pay her, that used to be counted as a wage and towards the national income. Now you don't, you have reduced your national income, yeah? So this is a huge problem because you know, various estimates come up with figures like at least 30, probably up to 45% of the national output being produced within the household, which is not counted. So we are, first of all, undervaluing this very important activity altogether. Yeah? And secondly, this leads to this the skewed view that these women who stay at home, they do nothing. Yeah, I go out and make money. Yeah, but what does she do? Yeah, well, I mean the man has to realize that without her care work and household work, he wouldn't even be able to go to work. Yeah, so I think the problem is that in order to have the good economic policy, you need to be able to count things. I mean that you can't just be vague and have the kind of unfocused the policies. But this unfortunate side effect of this is that unless something is counted, then it doesn't count. Yeah. So
Can I ask a follow-up?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
sure.
so to return to the analogy of
Mm,
care, in one of your earlier books, Bad Samaritans,
mm,
you have a great chapter entitled My 6-Year-Old Son Should Get a Job,
exactly.
where
Yeah.
you, in essence, framed trade protectionism and
Yeah.
industrial policy around the pros and cons of child rearing. Can
Yeah.
you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so in that book which I wrote was published in 2007, but wrote in 2006. I indeed had a 6-year-old son. I mean, he uh, was born in 2000, so he was 6. And then, yeah, in the chapter I go, I have this 6-year-old son, and yeah, I don't use such a strong language in the book itself, but basically I was saying, God, this guy is a parasite, yeah. I pay for everything, yeah. I pay for his food, his lodging, his education, his clothes, his the TV, the Nintendo games. Yeah, and then I go, yeah, that made me think, and I realized that if I send him to work, it will be a win-win situation, yeah? Because I'll save all the money, and he'll have to basically try to stay competitive at whatever he's doing. Maybe selling chewing gums on the street or shining shoes or delivering newspapers. Yeah. And then I go, then why don't I do it? And for that matter, why don't other people do it? Yeah. Because we know that if we protected and invest in these children for another 12, 15 years, they can become the very productive people. Yeah, they may become an architect or the chemical engineers or the veterinary surgeon, whatever. Yeah? But I know that of course there's no guarantee that they will definitely become a productive person because some kids just don't become some of those things. But that one thing that is sure is that if I kick this guy into the labor market at the age of 6, there's no chance that he'll become any of these. Yeah, maybe the best you can hope for is that he works hard as a street trader, and then maybe he buys a small shop. Yeah, So this is how I justify this idea of infant industry protection, Alexander Hamilton's idea. So yeah, I mean it's a lot of actually economic insights that can be uh, earned from our everyday lives. That raising a child gives you ideas about you know the role of the protectionism, and industrial development, doing your household work, being taking care of your sick relative, or being taken care of by someone when you're young or when you're old or when you're sick. All of these teach you that it is important to be able to count things, but be careful that not everything that can be counted is actually the important, yeah. And the fact that you do not count something doesn't mean that it is unimportant, yeah.
This is a great segue to something that's very important, which is our students. And we have some wonderful students who are joining us. We'll try to patch some in to see if they are able to ask a question in person.
Mhm.
And I see right now our teacher. Well, there they are. Fabulous.
Uh,
Welcome, students. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm ready for the first question. The floor is yours to ask Dr. Ha-Joon Chang your question.
So introduce yourself, Sam. I'm Cameron. We both go to Romick Middle School, and I had a couple basic questions. One, do you ever you talked about earlier today how the first foreign soil you ever went on was in Alaska, and I was wondering if you ever had plans to come back to Alaska.
ah. Yeah, no, I don't have any plan, but yeah, I would like to visit it. It's the beautiful place with amazing nature. So yeah, if I have a chance, I will go.
Okay, ask your other basic question. I also had one more. Is what's your favorite food?
My favorite food. The problem is that I like so many different foods that I cannot choose. Yeah. So I eat literally, well, not literally, but almost everything. I mean, there are a few things that I probably can't eat, but uh, uh, I like the thing. Well, first of all, I'm addicted to chocolate, so that's my yeah the everyday food. But I also eat unusual things. I like eating the tofu. The tofu is the very underrated, but is one of the best the culinary inventions of humankind. It can be made into so many different things. I yeah, don't eat it that often, but I like eating insects. Yeah. Now, if I say insect, you might say, ew. But think about it. Insects. Do you eat prawns?
Yeah, I've had prawns before.
Yeah, you eat prawns. Prawns and insects are in the same family. Huh? No, they all have this segmented bodies. Exoskeletons, lots of legs. So why would you not eat insects like say the fried, the deep fried crickets and so on, when you are willing to eat the prawns, yeah. So think about it, yeah. There are so many prejudices when it comes to food, yeah. And when you overcome some of this, I'm not saying that you should overcome all of it. When you overcome some of this, your food life will be much richer. Yeah?
Okay, I'm with you on that. I overcame my prejudice of peanut butter, bananas, and bacon, and it wasn't bad. So I guess the next step is crickets and grasshoppers.
Yep.
Okay, on that, next question.
My name is James. I'm from Romick Middle School. When do you think the AI bubble could pop or deflate?
The difficult thing about these bubbles in the financial market is that even if you know that it will burst, you don't know when it will burst. Yeah? And this can make these bubbles even worse because you are saying, okay, it might burst, but while it is going, it's like a musical chair. Yeah? While it's moving, doesn't matter where your position is. Yeah, I mean the problem is that when the music stops, then one person will not have a chair. Yeah? So that it's like that in the financial market. Insofar as other people are still willing to put money into the bubble, you have no problem because there'll be people who will buy your the stocks if you want to exit. Yeah. Unfortunately, the timing is impossible to predict. So actually, the famous story is that the famous scientist Isaac Newton was involved in one of these the financial bubbles in his days. Yeah, it's called the South Sea bubble. So there's a company called South Sea Company. That cannot go into the details, but whose shares share price rose by 10 times in a year. Yeah? So Newton initially invested in this company, made a huge amount of money, got out, and then it kept rising. So he got back in, and then lost the equivalent of $3 million in today's money. Yeah? So he said, I can predict the movement of stars perfectly, but I cannot predict human madness in the financial market. So there's a lesson for you there.
Thank you so much for the questions. And we love folks at Romick Middle School. Thank you so much for
Very
joining
good
us.
questions.
Okay, following up on that, what do you think of crypto? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Uh, Thumbs down in the end because no, I think it can serve a useful role, but it enables so many of these the shady transactions and criminal activities. So I think, yeah, I'll have to draw the line there because in the end, I mean, the money is what people agree that the money is. So, there's no reason why only governments should issue money. But unfortunately, when this is deregulated in the way crypto is, there are a lot of negative side effects. So, yeah.
Okay, so I've got a little bit of a beef with your beef chapter in your book. So you claim that Uruguay is arguably the best soccer team in the world.
Yep.
And okay, well, it's not because I'm a Brazil fan, mind you, but I guess it's because your method of calculating that is a little bit unconventional. So you
Absolutely.
measure success by capita, you take Uruguay's World Cup wins per population, and then you extrapolate it to Brazil's 212 million
Uh-huh.
people. So convince me, Dr. Chang, why on earth should I believe you that Uruguay has the best soccer team or football, I
No,
should say?
yeah, actually, that kind of links back to my earlier point. Because, yeah, what I did in the book was to say that Uruguay has won two World Cups with 3.5 million people. Yeah, Brazil has won six, but it has 210 million, or the exact number I forget. Huge number of people. So if the Uruguay had Brazil's population, it would have won something 121 cups. Yeah. Now, it's a cheeky way of kind of highlighting Uruguay which has a reason later, but that in itself shows measuring the things can be measured in many different ways, and depending on how you measure things, you can portray a very very different picture. Yeah. So this is one example, but another typical example is when you are comparing growth rates of the two countries. Yeah, uh, one country might have a very rapid rate of population growth, another that might not. And even if they both grow at 5% overall, country with say 3% population growth, it actually that means only 2% increase in the real terms. If the other country that grew at 5% has 1% population growth rate, it's 4%, in real terms. So, which one that do you think is doing better? Yeah, I'm not saying that there's only one way of looking at things. Actually, that there's no single right way of looking at things. That is one of my main the arguments in this book and elsewhere. But basically, what you need to do is to know why you are seeing things in this way. And when other people challenge you, you should be able to say, this is how I saw it. And I saw it in this way because I think these things are important. Yeah? You cannot win this argument in any way. I mean, yeah, there might be some ways that are better than others, but that doesn't mean that it's absolutely correct. So yes, I mean despite uh, drawing the wrath from my Brazilian friends, I yeah, said this cheeky thing because I wanted to talk about Uruguay. It's in many ways quite an interesting country. It's the first country in the Latin America that gave women votes and made divorce legal, and so it's a very interesting country. Yeah, so I want to talk about it, and yeah, eventually talk about the corned beef and free trade. I mean, it's such a convoluted story that I'm not going to go into it now, but it's that was a very interesting country to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I like how you did that, and you wove in facts and some trivia into your book. That was really interesting. Now you mentioned garlic. Let's kind of jump around a little bit here. Um, Garlic can add flavor, but it also can be a bit overpowering. So if there's an economic garlic that's powerful but risky if we use too much of it, is there one of those? Is there an
Oh
economic?
wow. Oh, no, I would say that all concepts are like that. Yeah, I mean, if you uh, put too much emphasis on one aspect of the economy or one way of understanding the world and so on, then you end up with the extreme views that usually don't work. Yeah, so when uh, you know the in the 19th century, the extreme free market ideas were dominant. People justified the you know things like slavery and you know selling opium to Chinese customers by the British India Company. All of these really bad things in terms of free market, because the view at the time was as far as it's a voluntary exchange, it's fine. So that when some people try to regulate child labor, the prevailing opinion in the at least early 19th century was, you know, this is going to undermine the foundation of a free market economy, which is the freedom of contract. Yeah? These children want to work. These people want to hire them. What is your problem? Yeah? It's not as if these factory owners kidnap the children and force them into slave labor. Yeah? So that taken to the extreme, free market views can justify slavery and the child labor and the selling narcotics. Yeah. On the other hand, if you go to the other extreme and say markets are bad, let's destroy all markets and institute a central planning system. Yeah. Okay, I mean the Soviet system was quite effective in building the industry out of nothing and winning the Second World War, but in the end became a system that couldn't meet the people's demands, and when the people were not happy with it, they used political repression to shut them up. So, I don't want any single ingredient to dominate because usually that ends very badly.
Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I just want to end, I know we're out of time, quickly. If you could have added one more food chapter to edible economics, what would it be, and what economic idea would it represent?
Ah, yeah, there were a few other food ingredients that almost made it to the book. So let me pick one of them. Yeah, one that I almost put in there that was milk. Yeah. So this, yeah, was actually to talk about cooperatives. Yeah. So the most the successful cooperatives that exist in the dairy industry. So the earliest the success story was the Danish dairy cooperatives, which banded these dairy farmers banded together, bought these creaming machines to process milk and produce butter, cheese, and they used the whey from the process to feed pigs, which were then slaughtered in the collective the slaughterhouse to be processed into bacon. And this made Denmark in the late 19th century turn itself from a very, very poor agrarian economy into industry into economy that with very successful export-oriented food processing industry, yeah? And that is the foundation of Danish the prosperity. So yeah, in that chapter, I would have liked to discuss. We have been told by this ideological free market economists that competition is always good. Yeah. Yes, that competition is the necessary. It can be very good, but that sometimes it is better if you can cooperate with each other. Yeah? So, this idea that somehow, the more competition you have, it is better. Is very misleading, and there are many instances of dairy producer cooperatives, the consumer cooperatives, that bulk purchase things to lower the cost. There are many cooperative arrangements in the world, including the welfare state and so on, that are really good things. So yeah, I probably could have had that chapter, but I didn't want the book to become too long, so I stopped yeah with chocolate. Yeah.
Well, I haven't stopped with chocolate, and I'm still
Hmm.
going to keep on going. So thank you, Ha-Joon, for joining us and answering all of these questions. And
Yeah.
over to you, Siobhan.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I just have to wrap up as you were talking about eating insects. It brought back a childhood memory of my dad. I don't know how you pronounce it. Is it bundugi?
Bandegi, yeah,
Yeah,
bandegi.
yes. It's a Korean snack of seasoned
Yeah,
silkworms. So I just I appreciate this conversation so much, and it's interesting how food can connect us to culture and economics in a way that we don't always notice. So thank you for being here,
sure.
and sharing your insights with us. Also to Lisa Christensen for moderating today's discussion so skillfully. And then again, very grateful to our partner councils, Houston, Oregon, Seattle, Connecticut, Charlotte, Dallas, Fort Worth, Kansas City, and Juneau for helping collaborate on today's program. Before we completely wrap up, I want to share a couple of upcoming opportunities with our council. First, please don't forget to register for our next program on November 12th with Ambassador William Taylor. And then also, we are excited to launch our new book club, Global Symposium, which will be starting on November 13th. Our first selection is Inside the Reagan White House, which is especially exciting because the author, Mr. Levin, will be joining us in Alaska this December for a program with the council. And again, just thank you all to our participants and the councils, our speaker moderator for joining us today and for supporting the World Affairs Council. We hope to see you at a future program. Thank you.